All right, fellas, here's one that should be pretty simple, pretty quick. Punkwood, charred punkwood, used for fire starting. Whenever you use the old flint and steel, the fire starting. We were talking about char cloth. Char cloth is something that will take a spark real quick, and then you can make an ember. Take the ember, put it in a bird's nest, things like that. Char cloth requires you to have cloth of some form, whether it be a t-shirt or a bandana or something. If it's not already a rag, well, you're making it into a rag. You're cutting up your good stuff, and that stuff doesn't last forever. We're not going to live forever. So people aren't real wise about char cloth. They like it. It's nice and lightweight, and it's a really cool kind of way to do it. But a different thinking that I like a lot is, instead of using cloth, using charred punkwood. What makes punkwood? It is when something is dead, falls down, and a lot of times it is able to start to rot away and decompose, but under cover. Whether it have a bark over it or another tree. A lot of times it's off the ground where it doesn't have all saturating water, and it has a little bit of cover. And the biggest way that you can always tell, it's spongy. You can squeeze it. If you're kicking at this thing, you'll kick it right apart because it just comes falling completely apart, which is a great fire starter. But it's going to be spongy. Now, I've had this stuff laying around out of the weather for long. This is my for example piece to show people how it all works. So it's just dry as a bone. But punkwood is that it's spongy, and here's what you can use it for. Let me put this here where it's not gonna fall apart on me. What it is great for is, like I say, for the char cloth, you can use punkwood, and instead of having a piece of cloth when you're all done that is really delicate, and it produces an ember, but it sure is a little tiny ember. When you do punkwood, you end up with chunks of stuff, big, chunky char cloth, char ember. And what is kind of really great about that, let's pull a piece out there, is that now you could, a lot of people would do this with a flint and steel. This is not flint and steel. This is ferrocerium rod and striker. But what's cool about it is, let's give it a couple. Oh, of course, there it is. There we go. Come on, where's my air? All right. Took one little spark. See if you can see that. And it's an ember. Now, instead of having something that is a char cloth ember, it's a much bigger ember, more huger, mostest biggest in the whole world. That thing will really, I could feel the heat on that. Instead of having a char cloth that starts burning out, and when you get to the edges, she's all gone. As you can see, this thing really is much more goodurist to put into a bird's nest or a pile or fluff or whatever you're going to use for that. Having those big chunks. Now, if we took other chunks, you just put it on there, twice the fun. Good stuff. Watch your ears. So some of the thinking with that, a lot of times we have our little alta de oite or our little candy cans that we're making char cloth with. With punkwood, a lot of times I'll use larger pieces because I want those big chunky pieces. So you'll use a larger can. You can use a pot of some sort as long as you can get a lid on that. I've had people that said that they built it up off the ground and then put the pot over top of it and exposed it to a lot of heat. It breathes a little bit and chars it. It takes a lot to do that. Why not just, if you have a metal lid pot? Or you can, if you're really getting into this stuff and want to go crazy, sometimes you come across weirdo little things and you think, wow, can I make a kit out of that? And same thing, if I pulled the silicone gasket out of there, I could right fill this up with Punkwood, or with punky wood, and shove that on the fire, give it about 15 minutes, and I would have just a pile of charred punk to use in starting fires. If you know how to rekindle a fire in the morning when you got to make your coffee, you take those little embers, those little charcoals, and build it back up, and you get a fire. Same exact thing you could do with that. So it's another thought, it's another theory on how to use char if you're using your flint and steel, if you're using ferrocerium strikers, or we'll talk about other ways to get that ember. Once you get that ember, what you can do with it and grow. So there you go. That's punk wood. And fellas, every day, learn or teach. On a good day, you do both.